Family, this is Caden with Urban Finance. I am here with Minister Zumbi right now, and one of my other brothers, Seiko, is going to be joining us. And we're going to have the conversation today. Why is the Black community poor, or why are Black people poor in general? And so I just, love the work that Brother Minister Zumbi be doing out there. We've done several panels together. And so I'll just have him tell you a little bit about himself.
Uh, Greetings to everyone. Hotep. Basically, what I would say for me is I would consider myself a servant of African people. My area of expertise, if you will, would be business, economics, and finance. Just recently, in February of 2021, I published my first book, which is called GOAT. The Gospel of Afronomics Theology. What I decided to do is to create what I call a Black economic liberation theology for African people in the 21st century and beyond. Because I think what needs to be done is we need to begin to look at business, economics, and finance through our own cultural lens. There needs to be something that is of, by, and for us. So with that in mind, I don't want to take up too much time. We can go right into the heart of the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Minister Zumbi. And I do believe Seiko is back with us. So I'll have him tell us a little bit about himself.
Hey, peace and blessings to everybody. Hey, Minister Zumbi talked about his book, The Gospel of Afronomics Theology. I have my copy. You should get yours. I also want to say that one of the things that informs what I'm about to say is this book by Dr. Herbert Harris, 12 Universal Laws of Success. So, Minister Zumbi published a book. I'm not there yet. But what I have done is I've worked with people in the financial services arena. So currently my firm helps people with credit repair, and I help broker investment loans. So if you're a real estate investor and you're looking to fix and flip, or you're looking to buy and hold, I can help you. And that's kind of my lane currently. But I've also worked in financial services, and I also do some faith-based presentations on what, biblically the Almighty says what you should do with your resources. So that's where I am. And I have a YouTube channel, Our Black Empowerment, and we focus on empowerment. I say get on code, and our code is empowerment. Everything that you do should be empowering you. So get on code, teach the code, be a code keeper. Let's go.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Seiko. Thank you, Minister Zumbi, for that introduction. I'm looking forward to having a lively conversation. You're two honest and open brothers. If you're watching us live out there and you have any questions at all, let us know in the comment section. We'll be reading them live. Also, if you want the link to join us live, feel free to ask for it in the chat. And, definitely say hello. I see a few people watching us right now. And so say what's up in the chat so we can shout you guys out. And so we're just going to really just dive right into it. So, and either one of you could take this question first, but why do you think the Black community is poor, or in this current financial place where we're pretty much on the bottom of the totem pole in the United States when it comes from an economic standpoint, a financial standpoint? Why do you think that is?
Well, I take this position. I've never considered African people a poor people. Okay. Whether we talk about our tangible assets or our intangible assets, we've never been a poor people. Otherwise, why is the entire world at certain elements or certain points in history have acted as parasites and scavengers on us? Okay. So we've never been a poor people. I think we've made poor decisions with our resources, going back to when we were rudely interrupted after the fall of the Moors. So we've never been a poor people. I just think we make poor decisions with our resources because we're not in our right frame of mind, if you will.
Awesome. Seiko, you want to take a stab at that question?
Well, yeah, I'm glad that the brother brought it back to the Moors. You know, you've heard that 7-Eleven commercial. Oh, thank heaven for 7-Eleven. And you know, that's the time when we were able to bring the Enlightenment into Europe. So I agree that we're not necessarily a poor people when we look at the world holistically. I used to run a group in one of the schools I worked at, and the group was called a Minority Achievement Group, and I changed the name. And they were like, "Why are you changing the name? Because we're not a minority." And they said, "Well, here." I said, "No, I have a worldview. I want our students to have a competent worldview, so they'll be ready for the entire world." And they're like, "Oh." And so when you take the worldview, yes, you know, we're not a poor people. When you look at what's happening in the United States of America, however, when you look in your pockets, my grandparents' pockets, my parents' pockets, my children's pockets, it might ring a little differently. And so here's what I would say. Because of some of the traumas and the limits that were placed upon people of African descent, indigenous people here in the United States, we weren't able to maintain the wealth that we created for a long period of time. And some of those behaviors became habitual. And so, yes, we can really say that the United States of America is becoming a better place, it's growing, it's improving. You know, we can say those things. But there were the foundational blacks who were hampered, prevented, limited from maintaining the wealth they created. And that has kind of put us a little far behind some of our white contemporaries. And then others who came, like I know your family came from the islands, good brother Caden.
Yeah, Trinidad.
Right. So the limits that the foundational blacks, you know, if you call them ADOS or you call them foundational Black Americans, whatever term you want to use, didn't necessarily impact you, although your family did deal with the racism and some of the limits. But the snatching of wealth, you know, stuff that happened in Tulsa, what happened in Wilmington, what happened in Atlanta, Georgia, what happened in Norfolk, Virginia, where wealth was developed, it was maintained, and then it was totally snatched. And the federal government and the state government and the locality said, "We ain't got nothing to do with that. So what? So sorry. Bye bye." That's how the cookie crumbles. You're not white. So those things have prevented our foundation. So truthfully, within the last 20 years, blacks in America, whatever, you know, with a mixture of, you know, the incoming, the foundational, we are building a new foundation now. And so the question says, what does this have to do with today? In the last 20, 30 years, we're starting a foundation that was stripped from us. So Lawrence Gonzalez. So Gonzalez, last name Gonzalez. So family either Caribbean or Spanish Caribbean. Right. So if your forefathers, when they came here, they didn't have their wealth stripped from them. They may have come from poverty from whatever country you came from, but their wealth wasn't stripped from them. And so within the last 30 years, when he asked the question, what's it have to do with today? We're building a new foundation now.
Right.
And so thank you, Seiko, for that comment and question. I think that was beautifully explained. I do have some not I don't want to say challenge or critiques, but I like to enhance the dialogue. And so with Lauren's question, you know, I love Lawrence the way that he asks questions, and in terms of always in a challenging way to be frank about it. And so thank you, Lawrence, for your question as well. I want to first touch on what you mentioned about the Caribbean aspect of things, because I do agree, and Lawrence is giving a clarification of his background. The Caribbean aspect, and I've always said that if you read history books, you can see the nature of the differences between how people from the Caribbean were treated in America and how people that were native to America was treated. You know, just from the sense, if you came into this country from the Caribbean, even as early as the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, you could potentially get a job as a plumber with that skill you brought over to the United States. And the white American who would not hire a Black American for a job as a plumber would probably give it to someone from the Caribbean, knowing that they were not natively American. In addition to that, that same white person, you often had to be and I'm forgetting mentorship in order to be a plumber. And since Black people weren't mentored by white people who formed created unions to keep them there, they weren't able to get certified and become a plumber. But if you came over from the Caribbean with that skill, you can get a job. And so, I do understand the historical differences there, Seiko, and I totally agree. Even from a cultural standpoint, different aspects of the culture that transition from the Caribbean here with us, like susus and those type of things. In the city of Boston, there's a great number of Caribbean people who own their own homes, who bought it when homes were dirt cheap in the 90s and 80s, by doing credit association susus, and now their home is worth $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a day. And so that continuity of knowledge doesn't necessarily get passed down as much when you have someone just stepping on your neck the whole time. But also, to bring it back to Lauren's question, one of the things I really want to talk to, so I always like to bring the history into it because it adds color and perspective. And then so when we move from the history, we know it all influences today, so I will never deny that. But then the questions become, we get into the space of what can we do today? And I've always been of the perspective blaming or pointing the fingers, even rightfully so, at those that held us down or trying to hold us down is never necessarily going to get us where we need to get. And so, you can jump. Okay, go ahead, Seiko.
No, I think that Minister Zumbi, brother, I think there's some echoing happening. Can you mute for a second? Zumbi, if you can mute for a second. Let's see if it continues. Okay. Yeah, brother Caden, I just want to make sure you get a really high quality thing. So, yeah, Zumbi, it looks like you may have to mute when you're not talking because do you hear echoing now?
No, it's gone.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, I just wanted to interrupt to enhance the experience for the viewer.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. And so, like I said, I really like that. And again, thank you guys for your question. Keep the questions coming, that really enhance, the show. And it really, challenges us, as I'll call us, a panel that is having a thoughtful and enlightening conversation on why is the Black community poor. And I know nothing that I said is new to you, Seiko or Minister Zumbi, but, do you guys want to address the aspect of it as well? And that wasn't the initial question. So what can we do going forward? So you both painted different aspects of the historical why Black people have been poor, snatched away some of the wealth. And I know, Mr. Zumbi, you mentioned, we've never been a poor people. So I'll change the term to broke now, or financially, the wealth disparity that between Black people and white people is continually increasing. I'll just give some numbers from the Brookings Institute. The median net worth for a Black household is $17,000, and the median net worth for a white household is nearly 10 times that at $171,000. So we're not a poor people. We've never been a poor people. But why is our net worth so different today? And more importantly, what are some things we can begin to do to change it? And what are some things that we're not doing today that is keeping us in this place where our net worth is actually decreasing? I have another statistic here that says in 1968, the Black household had 9.4% of the median white household. Today, in 2016, not today, the ratio had fallen to just under 8.7. And so when we talk about wealth accumulation, the Black people, we're actually going backwards. And so I would like you guys to talk on that.
All right, you want to go first, Zumbi, again?
Yeah, as you guys were talking, I remember in a issue of the Final Call, the Nation of Islam's historical research, they came up with an interesting statistic about lynchings and who they lynched. In the history, and this is just within the US, of the Black people who were lynched, over 80% were business owners and entrepreneurs.
Mm.
Okay. And historically, anytime you have a disenfranchised or an oppressed people who use micro enterprise or entrepreneurship as a vehicle to lift themselves out of poverty. Okay. In my book, I said that there needs to be what I call an African-centered entrepreneurial revolution, especially amongst men, because as African men, we are disproportionately unemployed and underemployed. Not to mention those of us who find ourselves in homeless institutions, city missions, and those who are incarcerated. Okay. So, I'm just trying to give a context to for us to understand how we got here. So that way we can begin to focus on the solutions to get us out. And I guess I'm kind of jumping when I talk about how there needs to be what I call this African-centered entrepreneurial revolution as a vehicle to move us forward, especially when we need to be the number one employer of our own people. Right now in America, you know who the number one employer of African people is?
I would say
government.
Government.
It's government. It's local, county, state, federal, followed by Black-owned businesses. But the bulk of our people is employed by government.
What? That's such an important piece. I do a presentation, and that presentation is called "I Want You to Be Powerful." And in that presentation, I say pretty simply, if you want to be healthy, you do what healthy people do. If you want to be intelligent, you do what intelligent people do. If you want to be wealthy, you have to do what wealthy people do. And so for the last 30 years, the message that came from Black households, whether they were immigrant Black or foundational Black, ADOS Black, indigenous, whatever term you want to use, was basically go to school, get a job, and stay there, and you'll do okay. And reason that was such a really salient and wise message at one point is because a lot of the businesses that we owned kept getting railroaded, whether they were putting a railroad through town and taking out some of the businesses that were there in the business districts. That was one of the ways that throughout the United States, a lot of the Black-owned business districts, the quote-unquote Black Wall Streets, were mainly destroyed by when the federal government came in and either put railroads or highways and byways. All right. So that act by our government, which was doing something they thought would be great for the entire country, in many ways decimated a lot of the Black-owned businesses. Additionally, like Minister Zumbi stated, historically, a lot of the people who ran into challenges and faced white supremacy, riots were business owners. If you look at Wilmington, when they South Carolina, North Carolina, I think it's South Carolina, and when they had that riot in Wilmington, it started when they burned down a newspaper. That Black-owned newspaper was actually doing better business than the smaller white newspaper. The person who started the fire was the owner of the white newspaper. He got all the rioters to go with him. They burned down that building. Then they went and started killing other Blacks in the area. A lot of them were business people as well. So to stay safe, the message was go to school, be presentable to white folk, and you'll get a good job. And in doing that, a lot of us ended up in government jobs. So the question is, what do we do now? I think Lawrence, who's a Marine, said, I'm a Marine, so I want to thank you for your service, good brother. But the question was, what do we do now? And I say now, those situations aren't happening as heavily as they used to. So we go back to doing what wealthy people do. Wealthy people build businesses. They employ whoever they want to, and they do with their money whatever they want to do. And in most cases, that's build. And so some of us are saying, I don't want to be a business owner. Everybody's not set up to be a business owner. I don't believe that. I think that everybody can invest. So when you invest in Caden's classes, you know, you may not give the curriculum, you may not be the teacher, you may not be the principal, but if you invest in his coursework and you're an investor in his firm, you reap the benefits. You're a part owner. Now, Caden is doing the work. The people you employ are actually doing the work. But as an investor, I'm a part owner. So when I invest in Nike, I'm a part owner. When I invest in Food Lion, when I invest in Tesla, I'm a part owner. So that's one way, by being owners, focusing on ownership. And secondly, the last thing I'm going to say before I pass it back to you, Brother Caden, is I said that if you want to be wealthy, you have to do what wealthy people do. There are three levels of power. There's powerful, there's valuable, and those little value. People with little value have a hard time doing anything financially. They can't keep a job, they can't keep a household, you know, they can't do anything financially. People who are valuable have skills and knowledge that work for people who are powerful. Powerful people are able to employ themselves and anybody else they want to, and they can take their power and do whatever they want to. So what we need to do is, as we push our children to go to college and trade school and to get skills, is to work on becoming powerful so that they can hire people. Most of the religious texts, and particularly the Bible in specific, talks about having 7 or 8 streams of income. Most Christians don't do that. But you know,
no.
hey, yeah, they know.
It says.
Yeah. It's in Solomon stuff. You know, he's like have 7 Proverbs. It's in Proverbs. They have 7 or 8. You know, I can't quote it. I don't want to mess it up. But my point is, when we're owning and we're acting to make sure that we empower people, then we will fix one aspect of our financial situation.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Seiko. So I do want to take times and highlight some of the questions that's being asked in the comment section. Okay. So I'm going to read some of those questions. I'm going to read some of those comments. But thank you guys for watching the channel. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the like button. That really helps to promote the content and get it out there with the YouTube algorithm. And if you want to sponsor the channel, feel free to, you know, hit that thanks button or super chats, super stickers, and sponsor the channel that way to help keep these type of content and conversations going. And so we do have some. Celestine gave the face that she's thinking. And so, you know, if you're still there, let us know what you're thinking precisely. And Lawrence said, to answer the question, Black communities aren't pushing education attainment. And Seiko talks about a little about why we were pushing that so heavily, and even somehow sometimes where we need to make some pivots in that pushing, job positioning, and marriage and positive relationship and investment. And so I definitely want to, you know, uplift that marriage and positive relationship aspect. So I'll probably ask both of you guys, you know, a question on that after I finish reading some of these comments. And we have Divided Dogo. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but he or she says it's just education, physical education. It isn't just education. Physical education simply isn't taught in the United States. Fiscal isn't taught in the United States. The system fails us, which, you know, I think all of us will agree the educational system is certainly failing our community without a doubt. And Lauren said, why? Because communities who followed those metrics in Asia, i.e. Asians, Ghanaian, Nigerians, all have median household incomes higher than white Americans in 2020. And so, yeah, and so there are segments of, even in the Black community, that are doing better than the average white person. And we can talk about that as well. Why those things, why is that happening? Why we do believe that's happening? And obviously, shout out to my cousin Oliver, who is joining us as well today. So if you guys have any questions or comments while we're having this conversation about why the Black community is poor than other communities or last in the fiscal ladder, you know, let us know in the comment section. But I do want to highlight one of the points that Lawrence had. And so what role do you guys think, I guess, the current culture plays a part, the broken family, broken natures of the Black family play in the economic achievement of Black people? Do you feel like it plays a role, a big role? Doesn't it play a role? What are your thoughts there?
Okay. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that there were 3 sciences that you had to master in order to have community. Okay. The first science is the science of business, economics, and finance. The second science is the science of diplomacy, negotiation, and warfare. The third science is the science of mate selection and genetic engineering. I'm going to throw in a 4th science, the science of culture. Okay. If we were to take the first and the third science, okay, and Brother Seiko has heard me say this before, the child support industry is the result of our ignorance of the laws of sex and money and our lack of respect for the power of sex and money. Because we lack a cultural cohesiveness. You know, there was a time when you brought someone home as a potential mate, the elder or elders wanted to go back 3 to 5 generations into that person's history to see if there were any red flags that occurred. Okay, because cultural cohesiveness plays a significant role in building and maintaining multi-generational wealth. So there was a reason why you had to make sure that whoever you chose was on the same path and the same level as you. I think the term is being equally yoked. I think that term is. So we really have to start getting back into, and I say this in my book, where any economic philosophy that we create or we embrace, it must be rooted in a nucleus of culture, history, and spirituality. And I can't emphasize that enough.
Seiko, you want to take that question?
Well, I want to do one thing very quickly, and then I want to answer the question. So I'm going to have to ask you to ask the question again. Okay. But Brother Gonzalez asked, or in one of his statements, when he said, these are the reasons why, he talked about that in the quote unquote, Black community, we don't push education. I want to kind of add a little clarity to that. We haven't done a really great job within the last 20, 30 years. Prior to that, a lot of these problems in the so-called Black community or in the ghettos are only 30, 40 years old. They're not long. They haven't been happening for over 100 years. Right. So, then we kind of have to look at what happened in the 70s and the 80s that really impacted our community. Now, so we can look at that. I just want to add a little clarity to Lawrence's statement. Lawrence, I think he was right on point. And once again, I thank him for his service to our country. So what was the question? I really felt that needed to be added.
Okay. And so the question is essentially one of the reasons that is often mentioned for the lack of economic achievement in the Black community today is the fact that we have a broken family structure. And when most people say that we have a broken family structure, they typically are referring to the fact that, we have a lot of single mothers raising children. Now, I want to say before you even say anything, my mother was a single mother and did an absolutely amazing job raising her 3 boys. And I know there are a lot of single mothers absolutely killing it to raise their child out there to the best of their ability and have children that are doing amazing things in the world right now. And so much love and respect to anybody who's able to raise a family by themselves, because even raising a family with my wife, that is hard. And so I could only imagine how hard it is for any single parent, mother or father. But with all of that love given and being said, one of the things that people often say, and Lawrence was mentioning, is the broken family structure and that impact on economic prosperity for Black people. And so what impact do you think that have, if any?
Well, I think that I'm not saying I think that. This is facts.
Mhm.
Hashtag facts. Families teach power, empowerment, and uplift better than any institution.
Mm.
So when you have a strong family, you're going to learn investing. You're going to learn real estate. You're going to learn how to maintain your community. You're going to learn how to maintain relationships. But if you don't have a strong family foundation, whether that's two strong parents, whether it's one strong parent, whether it's one strong parent with a really strong community around them, or it's two strong parents with a strong family community around them, whenever the family is the best and the first teacher. So when we talk about we don't have really strong families, that not only impacts us emotionally because daddy's not there or mommy's on drugs. It impacts us because the lessons that help empower us and pass on the things that promote financial stability aren't shown. So you grew up and you saw your family poor. And so some of us say, hey, I don't like this poverty. I got to do something about it. But others of us grew up and saying, oh, I see how to maintain and increase power.
Mm.
So those of us who saw somebody struggling, we're learning how to override that and go to step 2, while the other families are starting on step 2, step 3, and they're going to step 4 and 5, where they're building estates.
Mm. Mm.
So we're learning not to be poor. Other
Mm.
people are building estates. And that happens in the family. That doesn't happen in college.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in elementary school, high school, middle school. That happens in the family.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Seiko. And I would just say, let me know what you think if you're watching this live. Do you think the family structure plays a huge part in the economic attainment of Black people? Let me know a yes or a no in the comment section. Very quickly, I'm going to read Oliver's comment. He said, financial literacy is lacking in far too many of our households. In general, too many of us are still fueling the generational curse that continues by way of not investing more in ourselves and our communities as opposed to working to help and build. And so, thank you for that comment, Oliver. That is so true and so, so important right there. And so I guess drilling down on, I guess Lawrence had another comment, and his comment was, why aren't we merely copying the communities that are working? And so this is a very good question. Dr. Claude Anderson addresses in his book, some of the reasons why Black people can't just copy other communities. But I would look in his book, Powernomics, but I would love to hear, the two of your thoughts on it. And then maybe I'll share some of the thoughts he had in his book. Go ahead.
Can I go first? I'll be short. I'll be short because I know he's going to come with the historical information, and those communities that are working followed the Black Americans model. We were already doing this stuff. We were already doing this stuff out of slavery. 10 years after the slavery was ended in the United States, we had banks that had millions of dollars in them. We had blacks, foundational blacks on their way to being multimillionaires. We had Black Wall Streets all over the United States that were developing. So we need to copy what we were doing before our second or third interruption.
Come on now. Minister Zoom.
Yeah. Oh, before I forget, the passage is Ecclesiastes 11:1-6, where it talks about having multiple streams of income. Okay. And actually, Dr. Claude Anderson also mentions this in Black Labor, White Wealth about making this apple oranges comparison. Part of the reason why you can't just do what immigrants do is because when these immigrants come to America, they don't carry the 500-year baggage that we still have and we're still trying to get off us. Okay. The institutional stuff, having been turned upside down, inside out, we still haven't had a chance to go through a grieving process. Okay. Now, there are certain things that we can do. And one of the things, just to keep it basic, the 10% solution, can we pay ourselves a dime out of every dollar that we get? Because if you're going to fight a war for the economic liberation of your people, you need resources. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is, how do we gather resources on a micro as well as a macro level? You had mentioned the susus. That's one way of gathering resources. But just to start on an individual level, can you give yourself a dime out of every dollar? So that way, when you have this quote unquote war chest, when an opportunity arises, you can take advantage of it. You know, so I just want to, you know, kind of get as grassroots as possible, so that way our Pookie, Ray Ray, and Junebug folk can get in it.
No, I think that's awesome, and I think that's one of the misconceptions about, I will say, the Black America or ADOS or that community. Before I go into that, let me just read Don Johnson. Always good to see you, Don. Comments, and he says, "Why can't we just copy other communities? Because our historic lineage has two different trajectories. We're the only people that have been in bondage on this land." And I think, you know, and I often like to focus on what we can do now, you know, and so, you know, that has always traditionally been my main focus. And so if I'm having a conversation, I always like to spend about 80% of it focus on what we can do now in order to change our situation, because the government aren't going to save us, even though I do believe that Black people are owed reparation, but I'll never depend on the government to save us. And if we don't believe that we can change our predicament, then our predicament won't change. And so focusing on what we do now, for me, has always been the most important thing. And that has to be, for me, be the 80%. But the 20% is that historical knowledge of what we've been through in this country. And that is important because it isn't taught in school. And so many people don't know the history. Like Seiko broke down, that in the 1900s, even before we came out of slavery, we were business owners, entrepreneurs, and developing successful businesses. In North Carolina, Tulsa, Oklahoma, we were creating businesses that surpassed white businesses in those countries in the 1930s and 40s. You know, and so very early on, Black people were very successful business owners in this country before we even had any immigration from people of all across the different diasporas, Asians, and things like that. And so, but that history isn't taught because that history is filled with violence and bloodshed of white people destroying Black businesses because they were more successful than white businesses. White people hanging Black business owner and causing Black people, mothers and fathers who, you know, because Black communities and Black family structure was intact, try to pursue their sons and daughters in direction that would not allow them to get killed sometimes. And so that history has to be taught. It has to be mentioned. And, you know, and so I thank you guys for always, you know, referencing that, because it's important. And it's important because people do not know that the fact that, you know, Black people were thriving in this country. And so, like both of you were saying, you know, it's what are we going to do now as well? You know, what are the things that we're going to be doing now, even if it's replicating what we were doing before? And I think, you know, to Lauren's question, you know, that's why it's not so easy to just say, why aren't Black people just copying other communities? Because we've done that and our businesses has been dismantled and destroyed. And like Mrs. Zumbi said, Black Americans, primarily ADOS, have not had the chance to even grieve and have been under so much oppression through the entirety of it. It's very, very hard to just say, you know, look on 2021 and say, why aren't you here, when you don't know the history of the advances and the success of Black people in this country? So I do think that's very important. Seiko, I saw you raise your hand, so I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I also want to add a little clarity. So I say We don't need to copy anybody else because we've already done it ourselves. We can copy ourselves. However, I think it's always best to copy the most recent example, because the recent example will take in the nuances of the day. You know what I'm saying? So there are things that we can look at with the success of other communities, as well as looking at the history of our success in that very same space. So, if you want to say, hey, I got to look at the Asian community and do what they do, we did it already. But if that works for you, then that's going to help us. So I don't want to dissuade people from looking at success from wherever success comes from. All right. I just want us to also know that they copied us. So when you listen to rock and roll music, you can listen to Nirvana and just say, hey, man, that's some great music. And know that Nirvana was doing what they heard us doing early on. So I think both of them work together.
And so, I like this comment from Thunder, because it's something that I think about more and more as I think about the history of Black success in this country. And and as I listen to people like Dr. Claude Anderson, I've never been the type of person that say this will never happen. And as I read Black history, I never say this will never happen, in terms of we'll never go back to a place where Black people need to physically defend themselves. And so Thunder has, when we build it, we need to protect it. It's self-defense and defense of our properties and families only makes sense. And so that begs another question, if as a community we were able to build wealth, which I think we're in the prime position, and we've been making a lot of success in that area. I think the culture is shifting towards a culture that perpetuates and talk more about building generational wealth. And so I think we're heading in the right direction. But can we protect that wealth? Can we protect that wealth? How do we plan to protect that wealth after we build it?
Insurance. Insurance is a great way to protect wealth. Of course, one of the biggest insurance companies in our nation's history was started by us. So salute that. But I think the answer is insurance. And I'm not just talking about insurance policies. I'm talking about adding steps. And I like what Dividend Dogo said. That's nice information, Dividend Dogo. I think that insurance or strategies to make sure that we're protected needs to be happening. Look, we have missionaries and we have an army. I'm talking about the United States of America. It has missionaries, it has diplomats, and it has an army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, right? Salute Brother Gonzalez, who served in the Marines. So as we build, we need to have missionaries for our businesses. We need to have diplomats that do strategic alliances and make contacts and do things in ways that kind of helps you scale. And we need to have the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, so nobody can steal from you. Nobody can take your intellectual property. Your employees won't screw you over, and that you don't spend yourself, you don't spend the money yourself in a way that destroys your company. So I say we need to have our own missionaries with your business. You need to have your own diplomats, and you need to have your own military. And if you take that approach, as we build businesses, as we build communities, and starting off with building families, I think we can help enrich the situation that we're experiencing now.
Minister Zumbi, how do Black people help to protect the wealth after they build it, even in this country?
It's interesting because I've been studying a lot more military science along with economics for this reason. There's a lot of Navy SEALs who are retired who are now becoming business consultants to Fortune 500 companies and others. And even Attorney Alton Maddox in New York City is saying that when you engage in business, economics, and finance, you must study military science. Case in point, when we start a business, we always start a business individually, as opposed to others. When they launch businesses, they take a cartel mentality. Okay, so say for example, when you look at a Subway, you look at a Starbucks. I remember 20 years ago, all of a sudden they had this cartel mentality where they were taking out their competition. Subway, they took out Quiznos, they took out Mr. Sub. Starbucks, they took out the Coffee Beanery and all of the other local. So it's warfare. Okay, and we have to begin to take a very militaristic approach, because look at what's happening now. When you look at the white population in a negative birth rate, okay, for every one white person that dies, there's 6 that'll never be born. And when you see a people who are on their way out of power, they're going to become more and more vicious because they're more and more desperate. And they will do anything and everything, including sacrificing their own to maintain power. So that's why I said when you begin to study business, economics, and finance, that military science has to be a part of the equation, whether we're talking in a physical sense, in terms of securing our physical neighborhoods, or as Brother Sekou says, put things, asset protection, if you will. Okay, and the weapon that we talk about with asset protection, and Sekou, you know this well, corporations and trusts. This is what rich people do. Okay, they never put anything in their personal name. I call it the Rockefeller Rule, where it says you own nothing on paper, but you control everything through corporations and trusts.
No, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. And I just love the military science aspect of it. I was reading Kwame Ture's book, and one of the things he talks about in the book was guerrilla warfare. The aspect, and talking about, not to get into politics, but the whole Afghan situation. This idea of guerrilla warfare, where you're not even, you have a decentralized, probably attack pattern to some degree. And so it is to say that, most corporations have plans to eliminate the competition. And Facebook and these big corporations, even though America has monopoly rules, they don't care about that. They will try to get away with as much as possible if it allows them to eliminate the competition and pay whatever fines on the back end. Because if you can eliminate the competition, you control the market, you control prices. And so I just love that idea of the military science behind businesses. And too many people don't think like that. Someone who get a lot of flack in the Black community for sometimes good reasons is Kanye West. But a lot of times when Kanye West speaks publicly, he speaks in a way that, I think a lot of people don't understand, where he talks about the white people who are in control. And I say white people who are in control because white people own the wealth the greater percentage of wealth in this world. They aren't trying to give up wealth. And it can be a black-white issue. It can be, I just want to hold on to my wealth issue. And like Minister Zumbi, it doesn't matter. For them, a poor black might as well be a poor white, but they will probably give to a poor white before they give to a poor black. But their goal is to hold on to their wealth and make sure no one else, whether that's through competition, whether that's through business, are able to take over from their dominance. And I think people have too much sometimes of an idealistic way of how our society works, and the fact that businesses really do have this cartel mentality of how they maintain power. And so, I just absolutely love that, Minister Zumbi, because I think that's the type of mentality that we need as a community in order to overcome the current system that we're in. So, that was absolutely beautiful. I do, and there's a lot of good comments. So I put the comments up on the screen because I can't really keep up with the comments anymore. But certainly keep the comments coming. Love the interaction and the engagement, and I'll definitely try to shout out some of the comments and the people. So shout out to Purpose Driven. That's my wife right there. Business is warfare.
Salute wifey, salute wifey. All hail the wife.
Much love. And so I did see something that Lawrence talked about earlier, and he says another aspect of this is the Black community family planning. By that I mean having 5, 10, 20, 40-year plan for your family. And I think this aspect of it, I love to have a conversation on that family planning aspect of it, because people oftentimes think too much in the sense of me, myself, and I, And so when you think in the terms of me, myself, and I, there's no way you're going to win a war of attrition, a war that's taken place over 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years. It sounds like a long time because our individual lifespan is so short, but it's really not that long. It's pretty much your children's generation and what you're going to do for your children. Now I'm about to go on a slight rant, but I even talk about the fact that I do believe our economic situation is connected heavily to police brutality and why we're being killed, not just by our own, but by the system in such high numbers. And so economics for me really is an aspect of changing things, changing the predicament of the Black community. But I did a video not too long ago that talked about how to leave your family $100 million. And I can't remember over the top of my head, but I pretty much believe if you invested $100,000, let that sit in the S&P 500 index over the course of 50 years, I believe you can go check out the video. I'll probably link it after this. It will turn into $100 million. Now, that sounds outrageous to the average person, but that's the power of compound interest. And that's the power of what Lawrence is thinking when you're thinking 50 years out, and not for yourself, but for your family, and for your family's family. You leave $100,000 for your family's family, leave that for 50 years. You may not benefit as much for that because if you're like myself, you'll be 81. And if you're someone else, you may be already in the grave. But $100,000 in 50 years turns into $1 million just in a regular S&P 500 index fund. Even if you were to leave that at the end of your life and tell your children, don't touch this for 50 years, you will be changing your family for legacies. And it's so much easier when you're planning out like that to make a huge impact like that. So even $1,000 in 50 years, I believe, can turn into $100,000, not in any risky investment. So I said a lot, so I'll just, allow you guys to just comment and share your thoughts based on the whole family planning thing.
Yeah, I salute that. I think everyone should go to your YouTube channel and watch some of your old content, because you do give the blueprint. You do give a lot of solutions, and your advice and your guidance are your experiences. So that's one thing I really like about your channel, good brother. The family planning, I love it. I love it. My family does it. We intentionally make plans for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I may not be here 50 years from now, but I was a part of the plans that are going to help guide my family. And one of the things that really made me understand the power of that level of planning is I was in a mentorship program, and one of the mentors was buying a property. And he said, Seiko, you might want to look at buying the other property on the other side of the street, and we'll turn both of our properties into rental income. And I said, well, that place looks really torn down, man. I don't know. He said, go to the city, go to this room and ask for this document. That's all he told me. Go to the city, go to this room, ask for this document. I followed his directions. That document was the city plans for 50 years. And I was like, what? They have plans for the city 50 years out? And they're like, oh, yeah, well, would you like to look at the 10-year plans? They're easier to read. 10-year plans? Whoa. Elijah Muhammad talked about 100-year planning. So when I saw that organizations and entities like cities make it their business to plan 5, 20, 50 years out, if I want to have the same level of longevity that a city does, if I want to leave a strong legacy like a city can, we walk around with our cities on our back. Kanye West always is repping Chi-Town. You know what I'm saying? Jay-Z is always representing Brooklyn. I do too. Salute to BK. Brooklyn is a blood type. So we represent our cities. Hey, salute to Beantown, Boston, right? That's where you are. Yeah. So we represent our cities. Let's represent our families. And one of the ways we can make sure our families have that strong level of support is by doing that family planning that, Brother Gonzalez talked about. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was talking with a friend of mine in the Bronx. When Chairman Mao came to power in 1949, they developed a 100-year plan for China. When I wrote my book, and right now I'm writing a savings journal to go along with it, I took that concept and says, if I can get Black people to think just in 90-day windows, okay, like a challenge I want to throw out to Black folks is, can you save $1,000 in a 12-week period? Okay, because if I can get you to start thinking in 90-day windows, then we can begin to build. See, I always want to be able to start at a grassroots level to get people to have immediate success, and then we can begin to build forward. Okay. Brother Sekou, do you have a family constitution? I know you were talking about family planning, but do you also have like a family constitution that governs that generational wealth?
Are you talking about an estate plan? That's another way to
similar to that.
Right. That's another way to say, Brother Caden talked about tell your children to do this with, the resources. But with an estate plan, the estate plan will tell the children and their children's children and their children's 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 children how things are going to act based on what Brother Caden says he and his lovely wife say right now. So that's one strategy.
So I would, and I don't know if this is similar, but I think it's relevance, Minister Zumbi. But with my family, we started about 3 years ago, I want to say, a family bank. And, that family bank was using the Rockefeller principle. And within that family bank, we created 10 rules that governs the family bank. And so, the family bank is primarily for family members to be able to borrow funds, either to pay off high interest debt, start businesses, or just someone who may come into a shortfall, loss of job, especially what just happened with COVID-19. And one of the things it's the priority for us was the prioritization of small amounts but consistent over a long period of time. And it's this idea that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be contributing $1,000, every month. But if you did, each person did $10, if your family has 50 people, or let's say your family only has 5 people that participate. If you did $50 every month and you have 5 family members, over the course of 10 years, you can be saving investing, and most of the money goes towards an investment fund, and part of the money stays in cash for, if someone needs to borrow, we don't want to have to touch the investments, if someone needs $2,000 or something like that. But it's that idea of, a little over a long period of time, getting people to think all 50, 100 years out, so that your grandchild will be set after you're gone. Your great-grandchild will be set after you're gone. Your family won't have to go to an actual bank in order to borrow funds, but they can borrow funds at a 0% interest from our family bank. And so there are 10 principles that govern that family bank, including one that says that the rules can be changed with a three-fourth majority of those that contribute towards the family bank. Now, anyone can borrow from the family bank, but the people who set the rules are the people that contribute towards the family bank. And I thought that was important because those people are the ones I would say are most responsible and are most committed to it. And so, family constitution can be kind of something similar like that. That's what came to my mind when you mentioned family constitution.
Hey man, I love that, brother. Is that one of your videos on your channel? How you develop that?
I may have done a video about starting my family bank. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, well, go ahead and do another one and say how things are going so far, man, because your channel, and if you haven't checked out the Urban Finance channel, you definitely want to subscribe to it. Check out all the content there. It's beautiful. Check out his Twitter stuff. I mean, you're dropping the gems, man. Success leaves clues, and this success is leaving you a YouTube and a Twitter page. So check that out. Check that out. But Minister Zumbi, you were saying some stuff, man. Go ahead with your stuff, man. Talk that stuff, man. Talk that stuff.
Because as I was listening to the dialogue, one of the things that came up is we're actually talking about building institutions at a micro level with these, family constitutions, these family banks. And this is one of the things that the Honorable Marcus Garvey and Dr. Clark and even Dr. Amos Wilson were saying to us is that we need to be in the business of building institutions that will outlive us. Okay. And Dr. Naeem Akbar says that beautifully. If you read New Visions for Black Men, he says men build institutions. They don't go looking for jobs because you can't bequeath or inherit a job, but you can bequeath or inherit an institution. You see? So just the fact that we're working on building institutions at a micro level is already putting us ahead of the game.
Awesome, man. And so, I try to be respectful as possible to everyone's time. And so I know we're already after the hour mark. And I think I'll definitely have to bring you guys back on because I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And I think we have, even more things to tease out in this topic and around this topic. I thank you, everyone who is watching live right now. I'll probably wrap up with, if anyone in the comment section or watching live have any questions. If you haven't already, go ahead and smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. I see a question from Thunder now, so I'll try to read through some last questions or comments right here. And I do have, maybe one or two more questions for you guys, and then we'll try to wrap it up just to be respectful of your times. But I'll definitely, love to have you guys back on the channel to chat more about this because it's so important. Thunder says also when you have a newborn baby, you can set up an account with a Treasury Direct. You can put 1% of your pay into this account, and then when the child becomes 18, gets a nest egg to start off with. Yeah, no, and that's so important. And I do a lot of videos on my channel about the power of compound interest because it is so powerful. To save a little over the first 18 years of your child's life is so significant. I try to be transparent about everything that I do because I believe that that's one way to show people that I'm living what I'm talking. And so even for our 17-month-year-old, we do have a 403B plan for him. And right now, I can dip in and check how much it has, but I believe it has over $5,000. And so, we may have another kid, or, we'll see what the good Lord provides us with. But before he's 10, just based on compound interest, we'll have enough in there when it compounds to have about $200K for his college fund. And so
better act right.
The power of compound interest and starting my planning for my son from the time we got his Social Security. As soon as we got that Social Security number, we created a fund for him. In addition to that, we also have a regular account for him that we put any gift that he gets from someone in terms of financial gifts goes into his personal investment account. So us as his parents is covering his education, but if he gets a gift from someone, that goes into his personal fund. That maybe when he's 12 he'll touch it, or maybe when he's 8 we'll start showing him, or 5 or 4 or 3, because I was reading financial books to him while he was in his mother's belly. And so maybe at a young age he'll learn the process of investing, but the power of compound interest on his side is astronomical. And so that is something that I always love to touch upon. But so yeah, thank you. It's so important to be planning for your children at the time they were born, because even and I'll use this word, but even the poorest person can put $1 aside every month for their child, and watch how compound interest works in your favor.
Look at, I don't know how to say, look at God.
Look at God. Won't he do it? Won't he will?
Yeah. Look at the godly. When you are doing the godly work, when you're creating, look at what you can accomplish. Look at what you can accomplish. I shade to that, brother. I shade to that. That needs to be a little clip by itself, man. That was beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you.
And so I say, hey, your son better not act up.
I know, right? I know. We'll see how it goes. We see how it goes. And so I'll let you guys have final comments. You can say how I guess promote any content that you want to promote, your books, your channel, and just leave the people with any words of wisdom. There's definitely some questions about investing and things like that we didn't get to, but I do want to be respectful of your time. But I'll definitely have you guys back on so we can continue having the conversation. Before we started, me and Minister Zumbi was talking about a few things that I think we need to talk about on the channel as well. So just looking forward to continually engaging with you guys. Thank you, Minister Zumbi. I still have, I purchased your book. We talked about this, but I purchased his book at the beginning of this show, and I'm looking forward to reading it. The last I guess panel we had was on Seiko's channel, and I'm looking forward to reading those 10 plans, 10 bullet points that you went over in your book. It just expanding your knowledge. But I'll shut up. I'm a preacher. I like to talk. I'll let you guys say what you got to say, and however order you would like to.
Okay. One thing that I really want to emphasize, regardless of whether you're an investor or an entrepreneur, true wealth is always developed by creating and increasing value in the market. Okay. So you must always think about creating and increasing market value. Okay. Because I always say this, there's no such thing as a selfish entrepreneur or a selfish millionaire. It does not exist.
I'll say this, man. If you look at what happened in the news in the last week, the United States of America brought a lot of Afghanis to our shores. What do they like to eat? What's their hair care regimen? Find out those things, sell those things. You can corner the market right now. He want to learn how Tariq. I couldn't help but read that. I want to learn how Tariq Nasheed hustled $1 million out the hotel conscious community. I got student loans to pay off. Okay, he provided a good and a service and a product, and those who like his products paid for his products. Those who like his vision for this hidden history museum, they invested in it. I gave $50 myself. Okay. Was I hustle? No, because every time I bought one of his DVDs, I don't like everything he says. I don't agree with a lot of the stuff he says. But I like a lot of the stuff he says. So, it was worth it. So I've gone to the conference. I learned some stuff. So he's not hustling. He's selling a product, selling a service, selling a vision. Those who bought into the vision funded it. But if you want to say that he's a pariah on the community, that's up for debate. So my last statement though is Get on code.
Hold on. I don't even know who Tariq Rashid is. Can you say who he is?
Oh, okay.
Just for the clarification, because I'm sure other people out there probably like me. I was like, I don't know. I don't know anything about the situation.
All right. Tariq Nasheed is a content creator who created hidden. Uh, oh man, hidden is
Hidden
hidden
colors.
something hidden
Oh,
colors. Yeah,
I read one,
right.
two, and I watched 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. So he created Hidden Colors 1, 2, and 3. He also had the 1804, the
Right.
stuff on Haiti. He had his newest documentary is called Buck Breaking,
Yes.
and that deals with how Europeans here in the United States of America often use sexual violence to control the enslaved Africans, and how that may have impacted the community at large after the enslavement process ended. So some people love him, some people hate him. Some people like me, I take the good for the bad. I've actually shown Hidden Colors 2, 3, 1804, and one of his other ones in movie theaters. We rented out the theater, we sold tickets. So I've profited with Tariq with his content.
Mhm.
So I have to give that that transparency. You
Mhm.
know, so I don't call him a hustler. But there are a lot of people in the conscious community who call him a hustler. So let me end with what I wanted to say. Get on code, teach the code, keep the code. The code is empowerment. So everything that you do, try to make sure it empowers you. What you eat, make sure that it empowers you. What you read, what you consume in your ears and eyes, in entertainment, make sure it empowers you. What you do, you donated $250. Okay, good stuff. Whatever you do with your resources, your financial resources, make sure it empowers you. You know, so I say get on code, teach the code, and keep the code. And we have a lot more to talk about. This was a beginning conversation. I truly appreciate Habisha King. I appreciate Thunder. I appreciate Holly Serpard. I appreciate Lawrence and everyone else who tapped in with comments. We appreciate your energy, your ashe that you gave us. We took your ashe and we made it more valuable. And hopefully this time you spent with us today has become more valuable. So go out and help somebody else become more valuable.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Seiko. I'll say that I appreciate you, Mr. Zumbi, and like you said, I appreciate everyone that tuned in, left comments, or just joined us here virtually. You guys make this possible. As always, thank you for hitting that like button. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. I did look up who Tariq Rashid is, and I do Nasheed is, and I do know who he is. And so I just probably just didn't know his name. But I would also say on a similar note to that, Dr. Umar Johnson. I have contributed to his Frederick Douglass Academy because I think it was a beautiful idea, and I know that there are a lot of cynics out there, but I generally felt he wanted to have this academy. It didn't work out, and many things as someone who's a serial entrepreneur as myself, there's a lot of things that we do that do not work out.
It just don't work out.
Thankfully that things that I've done, because it wasn't with other people money, I haven't received the heat or the hate. It was just my money that was lost. And I think that's one of the other pains of being a leader in the Black community, is that when you reach out to your community for help and support, if things don't work out, a lot of times, it's automatically assumed something about you. And so,
Right. Well, let me say this, bro. Let
Go
me
ahead.
say this. I also contributed to the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. When he first started speaking about it, we brought him to Virginia Beach and we marketed heavily to the whole Hampton Roads area. And he walked away with $5,000 of money from the Hampton Roads area.
Mhm.
And so And maybe it will come to fruition. Maybe it will come to fruition. But like you said, brother, being advocates, stalwarts, and leaders for our community means sometimes we're going to have to take some chances on things that everybody else can't see. So I salute the fact that you supported that, even if it doesn't come to fruition. Something else good happened from that. I believe that.
Yeah, no. And that's the point that I'm making. I think when you're someone that takes risk on projects to advance the Black community, you're a little more empathetic for people who tried something and it did not work out. Are there people that are trying to profit from just the conscious movement and give nothing back? Probably, but I do give our people the benefit of the doubt more times than not, that they're actually trying to advance our agenda, and sometimes some stuff don't come to fruition, and maybe it will. And so I would say, let us not be harder on each other than we actually are on anyone else. And so that's one thought. I would say.
That needs to be a conversation.
Several comments that I want to laugh, but I don't want to laugh online. But thank you, my brother. I appreciate it. I appreciate the comments and the dialogue. Sometimes you try to keep us. I laugh at just about everything because I think almost anything is funny. But but sometimes you try to keep a more serious face because you don't want people to think you think everything is a joke. But he said Umar Johnson looks homeless. I want to be Tariq category. He's landed ownership, Rolls Royce, and travel always paid of the FBA community. And so, you just got to love our people. We are a hilarious group of people, and we know how to enjoy life. And, and I think that's one of the positive nature of the Black community and Black people is that, through our struggles, we know how to enjoy life. And I think that has kept us, and that's going to keep on keeping us. And so, Brother Hashid King, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone else, thank you for joining us. I love the entertainment. I love the jokes. Much respect, much love, much appreciation. So like I always say on this channel, God bless y'all, and remember to live your best life.